So this is my latest layer project, which is a sinking stick bait for winter pike, and it started out life as an 1.5" paintbrush. The first thing I'm going to do is cut it just at the narrow point, and I'm not going to do it at 90 degrees to the, I'm going to do it just with a little bit of an angle. Probably better finding somewhere to clamp this. So just to square up my cut, I've got a block here with a piece of sandpaper stuck to the edge. This is quite coarse sandpaper, maybe about 100 grade, and I'm just going to rub it. It's got a square edge, this, so it should transfer a square edge, and that's pretty square, to be honest. So that's my basic shape. So next I'm going to take a marking gauge and kind of find the halfway position, just by checking. Oh, that's actually set to the right size with a bit of luck there. So I'm just going to score the centre line on the underside. Just do it from both ways just to check it. I'm right there. And about halfway, just less than halfway, and more towards the front, I'm going to, on that centre line, I'm going to mark where my centre hook's going to go. And then just a bit behind that, another mark. And that's where I'm going to drill for one of my weights. And then towards the back, still on that line there, a bit further back we'll have another one, and then just slightly forward another one, and then my weight positions. And then as best I can in the centre at the back, obviously that's where my rear hook's going to go. And then at the centre, towards the top, see if I can line that up by eye. So, and that's where my front eye is going to be. Next, I just need to make some marks where I'm going to drill the actual eyes. Say about there. So I'm going to come over the top and just see if I can just eyeball that position. So I've got an 8mm brad point bit there. I'm just going to drill out the eyes. Do the other side. So that's about right. I want them kind of, I'll clean that up with a bit of sandpaper, but the eye is going to sit recessed. You might be able to see that, you might not because it's clear at the moment. So swapping to a 10mm, I'm going to drill my weight holes. So then I've swapped to a smaller bit to drill the holes for the metal screw eyes that I'm going to put in. So I'll do the underside first. I don't need to go all the way through, and then just put that on a bit of a block of wood. I'll go and do that. the back. Turn that around and do the front. So as a temporary measure, I'm just going to get some clear nail varnish. This is quick drying stuff. I just cover all the bits of wood that I've exposed with it, just to give it some temporary protection while I test it for weight. And the great thing, because it's wood, you can see that it's soaking it up. So I've just got my ironmongery together, and I'm gonna, before I start sealing it up, I'm gonna test the layer to see if it does what I want it to do. So I've put those little weights in the holes there, and I'm just going to cover them with some pieces of insulation tape. There we go. And then I'm going to put my screw eyes. I've got a short one here, which I'm going to add a washer to. Just position that. I'm going to grip that in my cordless. And this is a longer one I'm using for the rear. Let's do that again. Yep. The front one I'm not going to put a washer on. So I've got a little bit of copper wire here, and rather than mess around with split rings, I'm just going to bend this round, make it kind of hook hanger type thing. So let's give it the drop test. There we go. So I've taken all the hardware off. And now what I'm going to do is put my weights in and fill the holes. And what I'm going to use is just a bit of wood filler. I've left this for an hour just to dry off on the radiator in case any water got in. Let's mix up some filler. This is a two-part filler. And I always mix too much hardener. It always sets really fast. So I'm just going to slightly overfill the holes to sand it back later. I just leave it at that because I always end up taking too much off. So I'll wait for it to harden. So the resin's gone hard, and I'm just going to get the excess off with a knife before I start sanding. I always put too much on. But easier to do this than to sand it all the way. So I'm just going to take the sandpaper and just sand it smooth. So once you've got rid of the bulk with a heavy sandpaper, you can finish off with a bit of finer. I'm using, this is about 300 grade. I just want to check there's no lumps really, more than anything. But that seems okay, pretty smooth. You can see the underside there where it's filled and where I messed up the hole there a bit. Fill that out as well. Now I'm kind of happy with that. I'm going to foil this layer, and what I'm using is this foil back tape, which is normally used for joining insulation boards or heating pipes, heat and pipe insulation. And I'm going to put some texture on using this, which is it's reinforcement mesh for glass fibre for fixing cars. It's incredibly cheap, this stuff. I think it's about £1 for about 4 sheets. I've got a bit of wood, pair of scissors and a pen. So I'm going to take some tape, about twice the length I need, and I'm going to fold it over. There we go. And then just literally draw around my layer. And with a pair of scissors I'm just going to cut that out as neatly as I can. So hopefully, when I get them apart, I've got 2 pieces the same. To add the texture, I'm going to lay them down. Put my sheet over the top. And then I've got a piece of brass bar here. It doesn't matter if it's brass, it can be anything. I mean, the really thing is that it's heavy and it's smooth. And I'm just going to roll this up. Put as much pressure as I can. And there, it's added the texture. Do the next one. So there's the 2 pieces textured. If the texture's a bit too deep, sometimes what I do is I just literally go back over it without, and it just flattens it off a bit. There. So I've still got the cuts in it, but I haven't got the lumpy surface. To put the foil on the fishing layer, I'm just going to lay it over, but I'm going to peel the back off the tape. This is normally the trickiest bit. There's really an easy way of doing this, I suppose. I'm just going to try and get as much as I can in the centre, in the middle. And then really it's a case of just smoothing it from the centre out. And what I'm using is this brass bar. You can use anything round, you've just got to check that there's nothing at all on it that's going to mark the foil. But it's just a case of really just delicately pushing it out and then softly smoothing out the creases. and you're working from the centre out. If you get really stubborn creases, you can apply a bit of pressure, normally on the edges. That looks fine. So I just turn it over, exactly the same. I think the difficult bit I always find is matching the two sides, getting them perfectly equal to each other. Just peel that back off. And again, all I can do is just see if I can get it pretty central. Start with that end down. Yeah, that's a bit better. So for eyes, I was going to use these clear domes and put a pattern in them, but I found these red half domes as well. So I'm going to use them. You can use any type of self-adhesive eye that you can find, or even just put a bead in there. I'll just... there. So before I clear coat, I'm just going to mix up a bit of 5-minute epoxy and fit the hardware, basically, the hook hangers. So I'll just give this a bit of a mix. I always mix too much of this stuff. There you go. It'll say that on my gravestone, he always mixed too much. Just gonna do it there. So just before I begin the epoxy, what I'm going to do is give it a clean with this, which is IPA rubbing alcohol basically. The reason I want to do this is because I want to get any grease or dust or dirt off the foil or the layer. So I'm not going to spray the layer, I'm just going to spray my cloth and rub it over the layer. It'll just get rid of any grease or dirt. Don't go too much, you just have to be careful of the edges of the foil. The great thing about this is it evaporates incredibly quickly. Using a couple of paper clips, I've put the layer on the coating rack which I've made, and I'm going to coat the layer with some Envirotex, which is a 2-part epoxy. There is a more in-depth video on how to do this, and I'll post a link up. But what I've done here is I've mixed up 2 mil of epoxy, and just with a paintbrush I'm just going to apply an even coat. Which is just like applying a thick varnish, just even strokes, and it does self-level as well, so you don't have to be the best painter and decorator in the world. So I'll carry on just applying this coat, and then I'll come back to you, I'll show you one of the other steps. So I've given that a coat and everything looks kind of good. What I'm going to do is go over with a blow lamp just to pop any bubbles that come from the paintbrush or from mixing. Normally the big problems around the eyes or any features like these little screw eyes here. So I just give it a quick going over with the torch, and this breaks the surface tension, basically the carbon dioxide, not so much the heat, although heat will do. Yeah, that's looking good. So I'm just going to put a cover over it and leave it overnight. The epoxy's had a couple of days to harden up, everything looks fine. What I'm going to do now is paint it, and just to do some preparation I'm going to get some, this is 400 grade sandpaper. I'm not going to sand this, what I'm going to do is just scratch it. This is just to give a key to the paint and also to any layers of epoxy that I'm going to apply over the top. If I do it too hard, it's likely that I'll just go right through the epoxy. Just to cover the eyes up before I spray, I've just got a little ball of polymer clay. There we go. Blue tack, something like that. Don't use anything oil based. Paint wise, I'm just using Createx acrylic, and this is opaque, black and white. I'm going to use a third colour which I'll show you later. So I'm going to start out with the white. This is the underside of the layer. I'm just going to lay down some coats. And give it a quick blast with a heat gun. switch colours now, and I'm going to do the top and around the eyes in a black. Same process, just build it up gently. So I've done the top and bottom. I'm just going to put some shading in around the eye, just with a bit of black. So to finish off the paintwork, what I use is this shimmer coat, which has got a bit of a holographic fleck to it. It's completely, well, almost completely translucent, so the background will, black and white, will shine through, but it just gives that shimmer effect. So I've peeled the cover off the eyes, and that's it for the painting. Black, white, and a bit of a fleck. And go back to giving it some more coats of epoxy. I've given the paint a few hours just to dry, and I'm back with a couple of mils of resin and a new paintbrush, and I'm just going to repeat and give it another coat. And then again, to get rid of any bubbles, I'm just going to go over it with a blow lamp. Just popping anything. And then it's a case of leaving it, and I'm going to come back to it and give it a final coat. So I'm back with a couple of mils of resin and a paintbrush, new paintbrush. This had about 12 hours. It's not fully cured, it's still a bit tacky, which is just perfect for adding another coat, meaning the coats will stick together. So I'm going to give this a final coat, and hopefully that's the job done. So again, I'm back with the blow lamp, just popping the bubbles. So that's the clear coat done. It needs to set now, and that's the hardest part, is waiting for it to cure. I'm going to leave this rotating for probably 5 or 6 hours, and just cover it to stop anything falling on it or dust. Bit of cardboard with some plastic. There we go. So the layer's finished. I've added a couple of size 1 trebles there, and it's off down the lake now to catch some hypothermia.